Dice, yeah, ay, ay.
Good day and welcome. I am William, narrator for the FYZ I Am Damaged podcast. What if the most brutal thing you could do isn't quitting, but staying in a life that's quietly breaking you? Today, Oscar is talking with Cam Cordin, author of Savage Chill, Die to Live, who went from chronic pain, failed marriages, and a drinking and weed-fueled spiral to a hard reset built on cold plunges, kettlebells, and the discipline to face himself head-on. Now a word from our sponsor. Oscar wrote a wonderful children's book called Logan, the strong-minded little elephant. He also created a wonderful song for his children's book, which is at the end of this episode. Check it out.
Meet Logan, the strong-minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strength in their hearts. Logan, the strong-minded little elephant, by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of FYI I'm Damaged. I'm joined by author of Savage Chill, Die to Live, Cam Cordin. Cam, how you doing?
Great. Yourself?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me and thank you for being on my show. And just to get it all started, how do you like to introduce who you are and what your life looks like today beyond, your headlines?
Well, I'm living a full life, remarried, happy, pain-free, focused, in the moment. Like, I couldn't ask for more.
Mm. Now, take us back to the version of Cam before Savage Chill, chronic pain, the failed marriages, feeling your body and your life were slipping away.
Okay, I guess it started probably in the second marriage. And in that marriage, I had a son with her, and everything was going great. At least I thought it was. But like during the marriage, like if you read the book, I go into it. But basically, I dove into work and jujitsu. I trained a lot, and then if I wasn't training jujitsu, I was lifting weights. So I was, present in the relationship, but I was never really there. And I basically avoided any type of intimate relations by doing, diving, being compulsive about work, training. And eventually it led to the end of the marriage. But like even a couple, like 5 years before I started training, I was training really hard. And all of a sudden the soreness started creeping in, and like it would not go away. And I said, oh, something's really wrong. And literally, while the divorce was going on, I was leaving the country to meet another girl who eventually I married. But like out of nowhere, one day I woke up and my hands were just numb. And I was like, this is, maybe it'll go away. But I mean, like numb, like my fingers were like dead. I couldn't move them, or I could move them, but I could not feel them at all. And they were so weak. So the divorce happened. I left the country, met a new wife, and then I started the whole process again. Even when I was out of the country, I would train all day, I would work, and it was like the same pattern over and over. And eventually we came back to the US, and the pain just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I didn't want to admit it, like something was really wrong. And by the time I was 44, the third marriage was ending. And, it happened on a night. And I remember walking outside. We just agreed on the divorce. And I took count of like how much pain my body was in. My son was living with me. He had 2.5 years left of high school, which was roughly 911 days. And I just took I looked at my body and as a whole, and I said, "Well, I feel like I'm 70 something years old." I said, "Divorce is happening. Son's going to be in college. What do I have left to fight for?" And I saw the kettlebell, and I told myself, like, if I can't fix this, and I can't get back to feeling like I was when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I'm just going to chain that kettlebell to my ankle and walk into the pool for the last time. And so I didn't want to die by any stretch, but it gave me purpose, something to do, to fix this problem. And I started like literally that night, and like I'll backtrack a little. It's like I was also like that night, every night almost probably. I was drinking wine with my wife. I was smoking weed, thinking it was helping with the pain. It didn't. And when I made that contract with the kettlebell, I said to myself, like the versions that got me here were weak, they were cowards, and they couldn't go further on this journey. I wasn't going to drag that baggage along with them. And I literally drowned them in the pool that night. I woke up the next day fresh. Um, never drank again or smoked weed. Never had any desire for it. I was just on a clear mission to fix myself. And ironically, the marriage didn't, it gets a little darker is the next day, she told me she was pregnant. So I tried to resurrect the marriage, knowing that there was a child, coming. But it eventually failed after a year after, roughly a year and a half after the delivery. Like the damage was already done. I was the
Right.
root cause for the most part. And well, during that time, I was just dedicated to, the whole contract. And like every day was, one less day. So I really focused on like, what can I do to fix this? And that's where it began.
Mm. And I thank you for your vulnerability, because something like that, for somebody to put up front for people to take in and digest, it's not easy for somebody to just say that and say, hey, I've been in 3 failed marriages, I have kids, and it's just not an easy road. Now, quick question. Go ahead, please.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh.
No, no, it's not an easy road. That's what
Now, for somebody who might be in the middle of that type of storm, how can they what would be your advice to say, hey, look, if you're going to go through this 1 or 2 times, maybe take a pause. How would you advise somebody who might not even see the advice in front of their face? They're living moment to moment. What would you tell them?
well, I talk about this in the book, but a lot. Like the main tenet of the system is the two rules: no panicking, no whining, and you really have to work on that. And it's not an easy thing to work on. Um, but if you catch yourself in it, and you're aware of it, You can stop it faster. You'll never truly master both those skills, but you'll catch the knife faster before it causes real damage. And I think that training them not to panic is, for me, is the cold exposure. That's one of the benefits that there's no science behind it, but you really have to be calm when you sit in uh, ice bath for long stretches of time. And I tell people longer is better because it's the mental aspect of it. Um, and that really teaches you to like quiet your mind, calm. You're forced to breathe normal because you can't. Is if you start panic breathing, you're finished in there. So I think like when you put yourself in discomfort intentionally, you learn not to panic. And so when life does hit you in the face, you're more prepared for it. That's probably the first one. And like panicking, I mean, I'm sorry, whining is basically a complaint repeated over and over again without a course of action. So if you repeat yourself more than once without a corrective action, you're whining and no one else really wants to hear it too. I know I don't. And I'm sure you don't either. It's it's really just the sounds of surrender when you whine.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you hear it, you ask somebody, well, what are you going to do about it?
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, you said something was fundamentally broken. Looking back now, what do you see more clearly about your identity, the coping, or your relationship to comfort that you couldn't see back then?
Well, that is a good question. Well, I think like, and I'll say this is like for in a relationship, selection is probably the biggest factor in like everything. So I do believe if you have to work on your marriage, work on your relationship, is probably, I hate to say it, is bad selection on your part. You jumped in too early or you settled. Can you make it work? You can, but if most likely if you're having problems, it is part of it is selection. People do change. There's no question about that. From the beginning of the relationship in the end. But I guess one, I was never really ready for relationships. I'm gonna be honest there. I rushed into the relationships both times, or all three. The first one I really don't count, because it was such a short marriage, and it was about. I was in another country, and she said I had a girlfriend. She said she was pregnant, and so we said, okay, well, we have to get married. And literally, whole family flew in. And a couple days before the wedding, she said she wasn't pregnant. And I didn't know what to do. I probably should have called it off, but I was worried what other people thought. So that's another personality flaw I had as well. You know, being concerned what people in my family thought than my own well being. Um, and I just think that for me, I chose, look, my second marriage was 16 years, but I never ever gave the time I should have. There were periods I would, but I was very good at avoiding, and I avoided it by working a lot and training a lot and just making myself so tired that I wouldn't have to deal with the emotional aspect. And I don't know to this day because it's impossible to know. Was it a good relationship? Was it good selection? Because we had times in all the marriages, there were good times, But was I there 100% of the time? 100? No, I wasn't even close. So I think one of my big problems was if something bothered me back then, I really swept it under the rug. And then I made something small into something gigantic because I never spoke up when something bothered me. And I think that's a really important thing to do when you're in a relationship is if something bothers you, you should speak up fast.
Mm. No, I definitely get that. That's one thing that I'm in the motion of doing as well. You know, you have to learn how to repair fast, especially in a good way, meaning that in an entrenched relationship, especially with children and you guys got things going on, that quick repair really does wonders. And learning that with all the what you've gone through, that's, very commendable because I'm sure that you live a different relationship now than you did back then after all the, changes that you've gone through.
Yeah. Yeah, major. And I had a this time around, I really put my effort in finding the right one. You know, not to say that the past, if they're listening, there was, horrible selections, but um,
No, it just didn't work.
you know, yeah, it just didn't work.
No, I gotcha. I've been there. I've been there. I'm on my second marriage, and it's one of those deals where it's like, you sit there and you have to think like, is this gonna go any further? You have other things going on. You have your physical health, your mental health, and all the things under the sun that a lot of men tend to, like how you say, they ignore it, they defer it, and they don't do the things that they need to do to say, hey, look, I'm better than this. Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
one of the reasons why I wanted to have this, discussion with you because a lot of men, they may run through this thing in their head to say, "Hey, I want to be like this." Well, okay, what are you going to do about it? And thank you by leading with yourself as an example. Now, once this decision was made for this contract, did anything in you push back? How did you deal with that internal resistance in the beginning?
there was no resistance. I have to be honest. When I made that decision, I felt a sense of relief because you knew there was an end date or a goal accomplished. And I just was not going to go through a managed decline. It just wasn't for me. And I wasn't going to go on the, doctors wanted me to put me on the pain med. And they all told me it was only going to get worse. And I didn't want that. And for me, I didn't want to go out in a controlled decline, drugged up. That wasn't what I wanted. So, it was pretty simple for me. I really, to this day, I love working out. It's, it is an identity for me. I can't really shake it, nor do I want to. It's been like that since, I was a young age. But, so it was just, I have to admit, it was a sense of relief, and and it created a lot of motivation. And I think it brought a lot of awareness is, um, people are so scared. Like I will say this overall, and not to sound morbid, but they fear death in a very like extreme way. It's the one thing in life we're guaranteed when we're born is we will die. That is the only 100% out there that we will die. And there are people trying to live, become immortal. If you see guys on the internet. And I asked myself, why would you want that? That would, to me, would be the biggest curse because time would mean nothing. And I think that once you accept that you eventually, you do have an end date, an expiration, that you shouldn't be scared of anything. I mean, like death is basically a failure. Your body fails you. So why would you be scared to start a business, start a relationship, um, anything? Because in the end, we're all gonna fail. It's just, I mean, like it's not a big deal. Once you learn to accept it, I think you gain strength from it. And it's, I guess, do you watch football? I think there's a big difference between a team playing to win and the team playing with the prevent defense. They just want to hold on to the lead, but a lot of times they lose those games because of it. I think the mindset is you play to win. You play. You don't care what the outcome is. You go all out. If you win or lose, it doesn't really matter. It's just about that you gave it your all.
Yeah, leave it on the field.
And I think you see it more with fighters in particular is everyone wants to be the champion. They all have the hunger to be the champion. But then they become the champion and all of a sudden they're not worried about winning. They're worried about losing. And I think when you have that mindset, it creates huge amounts of pressure on you. And I'm a big proponent of, like, during this whole thing into this day, I always visualize the worst case. Every morning I visualize my desk drowning with the kettlebell to this day. And I think when you already know the worst case outcome, any outcome after that is no problem. There's no pressure. And I think that, and then, like, with today's world, it's always about feel good vibes, positive all the time. I don't think you should lie to yourself, either up or down, but you should be realistic where you stand today. And I think that, when you accept everything as it is, if that makes sense, you
It
really,
does.
yeah, you just don't care. You just go out and you do it. Whatever happens, happens. I don't care what people think. I'm just doing it, and I'm doing it for me, not for anyone else.
Yeah,
And
it's that positive building of the road that you're leading and doing it for yourself and your family. Like, no, I totally get it.
yeah, so yeah, that was a big learning moment for me.
Now, you stripped your life down to three pillars: carnivore, cold, kettlebells. What does no hack, no stacks, just fundamentals mean?
Well, for me is I do talk a lot about it in the book. Is subtraction is like the way you really problem solve. And when people have problems, they like to add. And I took the opposite approach and just subtracted everything. I subtracted old identities. I subtracted the identities of the memorabilia I had from those identities. I got rid of it all. Um, and people, I just got rid of everything to the bare bones basics, the restart. And I think that I started with the first things for me and everyone I work with, the biggest problem most people have is they're dehydrated. I know it sounds silly, but
It doesn't.
usually,
Trust me, it doesn't.
yeah. So a lot of people, like, for me, I hate giving my routines out, but like the first thing I do at night is I have these 30-ounce bottles, and I take two of them next to my nightstand. And I literally drink 60 ounces of water before my feet even touch the floor. I drink them fast too. They tell you not to do it, but that's what I do. I have everything just for me. The simplicity is everything's pre-planned. Um, from the night before, I already have the water out. I know my morning routine. I actually plan everything to a T. It's all systematized. So there's no thought process. And I think that when people are struggling, they have so many decisions flowing at them all day long. And each decision you make, whether it's a major decision or a micro decision, it takes your willpower away. This is, like, proven. And if you can systematize your day, you have all those, you have a lot less you have to think about. And when you create a system, You create it when you're in your best state, so you can execute it when you're in your worst state. And you have every type of contingency there is. And you should include every type of contingency is like you leave the house. How long are you going for? How many bottles of water are you going to bring? Um, Plan everything to a T, because all that stuff, it sounds like a lot of work, but you save a huge amount of time. You save your willpower, and you basically you won't have any anxiety. You won't be like, "Oh my god, I forgot this." And like you can have a checklist on anything now. I mean, you use Google Calendar, you can program, if you're leaving the house, to come with a list of everything you need. And like it saves so much time compared to like the people that rush pack and they're like, "I forgot my shaver," and they're all stressed out about it. It's just those little things, and they make a huge difference. And you're going to follow the system, and you have the contingencies like, I'm injured. Okay. So your workout's going to be, it depends how you're injured, but you can still do something. So no matter what, you don't have to think about it all day long. Like, what am I going to do for my workout? Am I going to skip the workout? You skip the workout, it's a slippery slope, and you're going to miss a ton. It just sets the example that it's okay if you start feeling a little bad, I can take the day off. But if you have it all programmed into a system, you can just look at your system at the flow chart and say, okay, I'm gonna do this. I only have 20 minutes to work out today. I'm gonna do this. And it might not be a full workout, but whatever you do, it's still better than nothing. And that I count it as the victory compared to doing nothing. And I think that in over the 911 days and plus, I've never missed a workout. I followed the system to a T. Now I had real motivation to follow it. Um, but if you design the system right, I think the system removes the idea that you need motivation. Motivation, you can go to Tony Robbins and you're pumped up for a weekend. And then Tony's gone and the motivation goes with him. But I think with the system, there is no motivation to it. You can do it. You did it with, I mean, for even any condition. So you're going to do something regardless. And through that system, you build discipline. And and then the results start creeping in from the momentum. Even if you're just doing a small amount, the momentum builds. Then maybe you readjust the system, you can add more. But it's because you want to. Instead of, most people start off with saying, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do, these 2-hour workouts. I'm buying this guy's program on Instagram. Good luck. That program was designed for him. You'll have 2 weeks, then you'll stop, you'll quit, and then you'll jump onto the next shiny object that you see out there that's, proving great results. But you design the system for yourself, you're compatible with, you will stick with it. And I think you have to believe in the system, and at the same time, you have to eliminate that outside noise that'll tell you to start second guessing your system. And I've always been a meat-based guy. But I do pay attention to I do like the carnivore. For me, one of the probably the biggest reason, it's easy. It's such a simple concept, but it really, I have a lot more energy from it. I feel better. I look better. I have like before and after photos after like 9 months on it. There was a huge difference. I look younger. And it's a simple system, but I read like these people in the carnivore community, like they're always second guessing it because they're always reading about like, well, this guy was on carnivore, now he's adding fruits. What do I do? It's just like you stick to the system is what you do.
Right.
Um, and I think that is the problem, is that outside noise corrupts people and makes them want to change the system. But like, you shouldn't change this. You should really be very like loose changing systems. And I think that um I mean, you can, and the simpler the system, the better the system is. I do have a background in systems dynamics, but so I'm really familiar with systems. But like my best example I can give is if you have a shower and it's just one nozzle from hot to cold, it's very easy to control. Then you get to the two nozzle one, and it's like, okay, it's a little tricky. And then there's like the third nozzle one where you're controlling shower heads too, and it's like I know you've been there, and it's like to the point you get into it, and like after the first day, it like takes forever. The second day, you're like, oh my god, I don't even want to shower. It's just like too much. You turn the one nozzle on and it sprays at you in your face. The other one's falling from the ceiling. It's either too hot or too cold, and it's like total chaos. And I think that's what comes to is the system is too complex versus that one standard one. You feel comfortable with it. It's easy. You're going to stick with it. Like, I don't think I would ever, if I was designing a house to build, I would want uh, anything with like three gadgets. This is like too much. And I think that, the carnivore is pretty simple. It's very easy. You just eat meat. Everyone has their own twist to it, but it's a really great diet for most people. Some people I could see why, um, you know, some people have like a different chromosome. They can't handle that much meat, and it causes problems. That like I forget the stats, but it's like 20% of the population.
Mm.
But for 80%, it's a great diet. Now, I came onto the carnivore is like for the last like 17 years I have been just eating one meal a day because this just works for me and I like it because I like to eat. So I know myself, and I said, what, I'm just gonna have one meal a day and just eat, because if I have 3 meals a day, I'm just gonna eat. Like, that's just the way I enjoy food, and I can put down a lot of food. So I started with the one meal a day, and it was, and I noticed with one meal a day, I mainly craved meat. And the only reason I would have like some fruit or anything else is because I believed you needed the fiber for digestion. And then I met my current wife, and she introduced it to me. And she's like, "No, you don't need she explained you don't need the fiber for digestion." And like, I was sold right there. I said, "This is great." Because if there's just steak in front of me, I'm gonna choose eating more steak than having some fruit. And it works out to be much cheaper than a regular clean diet, because like little head of iceberg lettuce is like $7, and it has no nutritional value or flavor. A little pack of strawberries is like $8. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like, and they rot pretty fast. You have to eat them right away. So, and then like melons, for instance, they're so messy. Like, who wants that? Like, I was looking post divorce is efficiency, and so I was eating burgers every night just because maybe it's laziness, but I like to be efficient. And I just, burgers were easy. Every day I ate the same meal: burgers and a bowl of fruit. And I had a lot of burgers.
Like you've
So
been like
for
you've been saying, you're keeping it simple for yourself. You're keeping your the things you're doing for yourself, you're streamlining it. And it seems like that's one of the methods of your system, is like how you said, you do it for yourself, you tailor it to what you're doing, and it rolls into it, because all of this is like, it's dripping in discipline. And with discipline, it's easy to romanticize it, but it's very, very brutal to live. Like, on the days you want to quit, or if you were helping other individuals and they wanted to quit, with everything going on, with the pain flares, old patterns, and everything, what did the savage chill look like inside you within those moments when discipline was the calling to this roadmap that you were creating?
look, when I created the roadmap, I had a slow progression. I never ever like pushed myself, believe it or not, like to an extreme where I would need discipline. It was always the cold plunge to this day is probably the hardest thing to start, but I feel the effects from it from physically and mentally. But the starting point of it's hard. And the actually, for me, the hardest part is when you get out because your body continues to get cold. And that's when I saw the kettlebells after like a couple months of it, and I was increasing my time in there. It wasn't fun warming up. Who wants to shiver for like a long period of time? So I saw the kettlebells. I started doing the kettlebells, and it just became like a great way to work out because I really don't like working out, even though my identity's on it. But it's hard to be, because it's 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 just not fun. It's kind of boring. You get really hot, sweaty. You're kind of always dreading it. But when I'm in the cold plunge and like however long, like today I was in there, I think 14 minutes. And as I was getting out, like I wanted to work out. I was excited. Like today's a little bit of a more of a challenging workout. Like I was excited for it because I get to generate heat. So for me, the workout is more of a survival method. And you come out from the cold plunge, you have so much adrenaline going through, and you just want to do it, and you don't need the warm up, you don't need anything else. So I really preach it to people like it's a great system. And I do make modifications for people that insist not doing the cold, but I think like in today's world everyone's so busy is that you can build this at home for $1,200, or you can buy a cold plunge for anywhere from like 7 to 15,000. But they all do the same thing. A deep freezer probably it does get it the coldest. It's pretty easy to build, but you get out, you're going to do your workout right there. Kettlebells are pretty nice because they don't take up a lot of space, and it's very functional strength versus if you forget the cold plunge, forget anything else, you get home from work or you work at home. Do you really have the motivation to go to the gym? Because then you're starting to think in your mind already, like, gonna be busy, traffic's gonna be bad, but and then you go there and someone's on your equipment and you're like, oh my God, when am I gonna get it? It's slow. You're spending 15 minutes there, then it takes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half because it's crowded, then 15 minutes back. But meanwhile, you could probably do this whole workout and this whole routine and get way more benefits. And I mean, depending how you do it, you could probably do it in anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes or 40 minutes, depending, how long you go in the cold plunge, how much you rest. But like, I really just like to go through it just to get it over with and try to generate as much heat as possible. And it works. You don't need, and I think that's the other misconception is people think you need a lot to of exercise, that they're heavily bodybuilding influenced and not the trash bodybuilders, but I will a little, is they have zero functional strength. Um, and like you can get you want the functional strength as you get older. That's like the real key. And you don't need a lot of exercise, like deadlifts, swings, maybe some rows, a couple other things. You've covered everything. You don't need machines. You just do it. There's no chance of burnout. It's pretty easy. But people see bodybuilders and it's have like the whole workout industry from personal trainers to everything else. And it even leaches into athletics is this bodybuilding training mindset, which bodybuilders are not athletes. Um, So I could go on about the whole fitness industry, how destroyed it is. And then you have CrossFit, another one that is probably horrible as well. And that trashes your central nervous system.
You
You're
think it's
doing
just for
lifts.
show?
Hmm, Well, look, the exercise they do for CrossFit, like the clean. The clean is a very technical movement with a barbell. You know, it takes a lot of skill to do a clean, right? And if you look at like the historically the like the so back in the day, the Soviets, that's where all the training methodology came from that's used in athletics today, is they didn't trash your central nervous system with weights. They had you doing cleans with like anywhere from 3 to 5 repetitions, maybe sometimes 8, because they were training your central nervous system, not trashing it. And you go to the CrossFit, it's like you're trashing your central nervous system. And you see a lot of guys are getting injured because they are trashing the central nervous system. And the same thing, you hire a personal trainer, they trash you, people want to throw up from it, everything else. Like, how beneficial is that? Like, you're just a regular person trying to be healthier. You don't need to really trash your central nervous system. And it's probably not the most effective way to get stronger. I mean, it's 100% not. You should never, like, in my mind, and like the research that's out there, you should have your workouts pre-planned. You shouldn't technically even need a spotter, because you should know you should hit those lifts with no problem. Maybe you can have someone watch if it makes you feel better, but when I went to the gym in the early years, I never used spotters. And then you have spotters brings up a whole nother thing, is sometimes the guy grabs the bar to help you, even though you don't ask it, then you become reliant on the guy helping you. And it displays a lot of tricks on your mind. And it's the overcomplication. If most people aren't professional athletes, you don't need to do 10 sets of biceps or whatever. You just need to go in, hit a couple things. In the regular person doesn't have like the working capacity, first of all, of a professional athlete, nor nor probably, and I'll say it, and maybe it's not controversial, nor the recovery ability, because the athletes are all on steroids. And they are. I mean, I'm not against it, but I think that it does make a big impact for if you try to train with someone that's not natural versus natural. And age makes a difference as well. But,
And
like,
do you deal with a lot of age ranges?
yeah, I mean, I deal with a lot of kids. Like, I have a lot of kids that are like 18 to 24. And they're kind of lost in the gym. I do mostly conversations over the phone. Ironically, I have them in Scandinavia. I don't know how that came about, but they all have the same pattern: dehydrated. They start adding water. They get out of bed faster. They were doing too much in the gym. Just like little tweaks, and all of a sudden they're like that. But because there's so much bad information out there, that I think if you look at it, is people they gravitate towards complexity. And I like to call this that people are fooled by complexity. They think simple doesn't work. But simple works for one reason, because you can follow it until someone convinces you that the complex way is better. And I think that that is for me, like, the biggest obstacles out there is there's so much bad information. And I think um like, just overall social media is really bad too, is because it's mostly someone else's propaganda reel, how it's saying like this is how life really is, but it's not.
So working off of that, what do you go about telling these individuals, like how you told yourself that there's these little things that need to die so that you can live the life that you want? So how do you coach them through that? Because you can just be hang up the phone with them, and they could just, look at some stuff. They can, you know, check porn out or do X, Y, and Z. And do you incorporate that into your discussions with them and say, hey, look, you know, this stuff has to go away to make sure that you're being the best version of yourself? Because, of course, you're speaking from experience.
Yeah. I think that when you design your system, and I help people design it, and you make it consistent, you eventually discover your identities when you're following the system. And through time, you slowly eliminate them. Obviously, there's like classic ones that, right away that you have. And those are pretty easy to get rid of. But I think when you really train for discomfort intentionally, and you're willing to face the hard truths, it humbles you and you start seeing it, like the big picture, like, why am I doing this? Because you're working on yourself. They naturally shed just from the system itself. So I think that is a big one. And along with, when you focus on the no panicking and no whining, those identities reveal themselves, because you start, like, I encourage people to write it down, like a whine log, a complaint log, just so people can see how dumb they sound. And they can review it, and then they start seeing that pattern of, like, no, not this guy again. And I think that it really brings it to light. Because I know journaling's real popular, and I don't think it's effective because people just randomly write stuff. But if you randomly work on the no panicking and no whining, you start seeing it. And I think the other thing, with the no panicking and no whining, is if you implement it as like a household rule, and your partner or your kids are on it, they can call you out and you can call them out, and you start seeing it too. So I think that really kind of helps, like, tremendously. I think that's why those are the two really important rules to the whole thing. And once you see it, you really have to get rid of all the memorabilia of that identity you killed too.
And for the guys over 40 who give up on their bodies and they're numbing out with food, screen excuses, and what are some lies he's telling himself, and what's the one truth you want them to hear instead?
I don't really focus on the lies they tell themselves, but, like, I think it's start small. And when you start putting positive habits in, you start seeing the bullshit appear. I don't think you can, like, I can, like, pay attention to you and say, you know what, you have this, you need to change this, this, and this. Like, I kind of, we go over it and say, tell me about this, what happened, and how it happened. And then so you can slowly, they have to make the connections themselves. And probably the biggest one is, people have to want to change. So I'm very careful, like, who I get to work with, because I screen them, because I'm not going to work with someone that is going to sabotage themselves, then blame me. I mean, like, you really have to want to make changes. You can't fix people that don't want to be fixed. They might say they want to be fixed, but, do they? So it's really hard. And I do work.
They may tell themselves they're ready, but you can tell from the outside looking in, like, look, you're not ready to double down on this and help yourself.
Yeah. And like, everyone that wants to when they start working with me, they want to do all the fun. They want to get the cold plunge. They want to do that. And the first thing I start with is clutter. And I think it's one of those things that everyone has it, and you have to eliminate it. Because clutter is also one of those things. If you have clutter and you walk past something, the decisions say, "Take care of me, do this, do that," and it just builds up further and further. Then it causes anxiety. Your willpower is going down, so you won't be able to follow a system, no, regardless. So you have to get rid of the clutter. You have to start getting rid of the people in your life that are clutter, and that's a tough one to do for a lot of people, because there's always the friend that only calls when he has a problem. You give him solutions, then 3 weeks later he calls you back with the exact same problem, and you feel like you owe it to him, but you don't. It's not really a friend. You have to eliminate anything that's standing between you and your goal. And it might sound harsh, but that is the real, the truth. If you want to succeed, some people you have to let go. Maybe they'll change too. You'll probably do them more good by letting go of them.
And who knows, by letting go of them, you might set them on their own path to say, "Hey, look, you gotta fix your own shit. I can't fix
Yeah,
it for you."
yeah, and then they can drag you down too. If if you're trying to stop drinking and they say, "Let's come on, let's just go get one." You can have one, but you shouldn't even. You should, if they're not supporting your goal or helping you get to your goal, you got to let them go. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not really willing to commit to your goal, to yourself.
No,
So I think
I received that, man. No, I understand.
y- yeah.
Now, this is a two-parter, and thank you for everything. Thank you for your insights and you know your vulnerability and what you've been through and what you're building, and you know it all seems like as a noble effort for those that who you want to really help those who wants to help themselves. Now, you're about 100 days past your original deadline. When
Oh,
you
yeah. Probably more. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. When you
Yeah.
think about the next chapter, the book, the school, the men you're coaching, what would that look like in about 5 years? And where can listeners connect to the Savage Chill if they're ready to start?
Well, I would say first, like most of your answers will be in the book. You know, I would say like that is probably the best start. And everyone that reads it, they have a hard time putting it down. They read it in one sitting. It's a really easy read. Um, and it's truthful and it makes sense. It's really battle tested. It's the right mindset to achieve goals. And when people read it, they like it. I think that I think I've from people I know, everyone read it in one sitting, and everyone liked it except one guy didn't. But in to his defense, the guy's never had one struggle in a day. He never struggled once in his life. So that. But as a man, most men really struggle. Especially in today's world, there's a struggle, and no matter what, you might disagree with some of the stuff or agree with everything, but for sure there'll be one part of the book that you will take something from. And it's really just about the basics, how to incorporate it as a complete operating system to really change your operating system, to be able to be in the present moment, to be almost like in a flow like state at any time you want to be. And I think that in today's world where AI is, people are panicking about AI and everything else, is the people that will be needed are the ones that can handle any situation under lots of stress, that are dependable. And I think the system in the book that it lays out for designing your system will make you dependable. Your wife will be able to depend on you. Your kids will be able to depend on you. And it works. It's simple. It works. Um, and I am pretty extreme that, like, you have to design a system so you never miss. That is the whole key. You start small and then build from it. And when you hit like a wall, in which everyone does when their growth kind of stalls, or your whatever, that's when you go back and you start tweaking the system, start optimizing it a little, and you really start focusing on it. And you know what? Your creativity will come back. And you just and like for listeners out there now, is break up your day into segments. See where you're wasting time. See where what your morning routine is. Like, just plan it out and see all the contingencies. What happens if you wake up late? Every type of scenario. So you can basically, like, this is probably extreme because I'm extreme with this. Like, I know how many steps I'm going to take to go to once I get out of the get out, I pick up my clothes, put it in the laundry basket, go into the bathroom, change the thermostat, come back and start doing push-ups. I know the whole sequence all too well. I know how long each sequence takes. And I think that people say, well, that's a little extreme. I say, maybe. But at the same time, I knock out so much so fast because it's so optimized for my day that I have so much more freedom. And I don't think you can put a price on freedom. And versus, then you'll start thinking about, like, do I really need to go to the gym? Can I just do it at home? And, some people say, well, I need the motivation from seeing other people to work out. But, chances are you're following a system you can't follow in you're with everyone else in that whole arena trying to follow a system. I would say is, you don't need a personal trainer. You don't need to go to CrossFit. You have it all inside of you, but you have to start slow. And it starts with simple things. I have a client in Sweden. He's young, and first time I talked to him, he could do 10 push-ups. I said, okay, each day, just knock out 5 push-ups first thing in the morning. That's it. And literally 2 months later, he's knocking out 30 push-ups every day, no problem. And he's not pushing himself. He doesn't go to failure. It was just a gradual build. He has the momentum. Everything is slowly changing in his way. Versus if you started doing push-ups and you can only do 10 and you go to 10, the next day you're like, can I do 11? And it's a struggle. Why struggle? You're only going to stress your central nervous system. You have to train it. You have to take control back to your nervous system.
And I totally agree with what you said about it's not being extreme, it's being aware, and it's being, yeah, I'll stick with that. Just being aware of what you do, your surroundings. I'm the same way, counting the steps. So, if I'm going down the stairs, if I want to go quickly to the basement, I will go this way rather than that way. It's being
Yeah.
aware of all the things that you're doing rather than just like, okay, I'll go here, I'll go there. Once you're aware of all these little things, like how you said, you can I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. Actually, I need to do more of this and X, Y, and Z. When you're more cognizant of what you're doing in your life and you see your own big picture, you know how to paint it a little bit better or even subtract or add what you actually don't and do need. So that I completely get because I do the same thing. whether it's physical activity, driving, or anything else, is like, you know what? Today I'm gonna go this route because I want to have a nice drive. I want to have a nice view. Otherwise, I got to get home. I know what to do. I hit this highway. I'm good, or do X, Y, and Z. Like that's understandable because people don't tend to have that self focus of this is what I'm doing in my life. They think it's too tedious. But it's like, no, it's your life. This is what you're doing when you're not even paying attention to it. So why do you need that extra whatever, and you can optimize your own life in just the simplest things?
Yeah, and I do think a lot of people, they're addicted to the chaos. They like getting up first thing in the morning, running downstairs, having a cup of coffee while dehydrated, causing more anxiety, running out the door, making it to work or wherever they're going just on time. It's if they feel like that's how you're supposed to do it. It's the same thing with like you go to the gym and the trainer kills you. That they think this is how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to feel stressed all the time. You're supposed to, be calm, cool all the time. That's how I see it. And I think that when you do like develop the system, people notice you more. When you walk into a room, you command the presence because you're calm. You have the demeanor, and you don't have to be the loud, obnoxious guy walking into the room. People notice you right away. You have some life in your eyes, and obviously, we didn't really talk about it, but sleep is probably the next. You have to be able to sleep, and it's it's a crazy world we live in, and like the younger guys, I know the statistics. Like I forget the percentage, but it's a really high percentage of like men in their late 20s. They need Viagra, or there's some that they haven't had sex yet. I don't know if it's obviously low testosterone is one of the factors, but it's everything in the environment, the constant chaos that we're conditioned to think it's important. And another thing that's like probably last step that I work with people on is um sense. Like we live in a world filled with like extreme fragrances that really disrupt your system. And that is a big thing. And I think one of the things that I talk about in the book is when I switched to 100% carnivore and I'm out on my back porch. I live in a townhome. So, there's a walkway. People are walking. And I don't use fabric softener or any scented detergent. People walk by with like, that use like a Bounty. I can smell it for 5 minutes later. And all I think is like, if you only knew, you go in the restaurants, they have those plugins everywhere. I mean, we are just so bombarded by smells. It's, totally interrupting the system that most people don't even sense it. But like once you start eliminating everything, all of a sudden you start recognizing it and you're like, oh gosh, this is really bad. And you don't
Yeah.
even want to go out. Like my eyes water. And I think that's a sign of a healthy system is because you're starting to get warning signals from things that are toxic. It might smell good, but it can't be good.
Yeah, that artificialness, yeah, it just doesn't. It's a temporary fix to something that, you can do other things to kind of mitigate it. And, it's, yeah, those weird things, man. It's when I'm always outside, I make sure we just keep it. Don't use those citronella candles. They don't work anyway. And, just I want to go outside and just, we have a magnolia tree, and to get that scent when it's blooming and everything like that, like that's the things you want. You don't want a magnolia plug-in, you want something, you want the natural, So I get it,
Yeah, and I will say this um, about the carnivore. And one of the things I noticed from it is you really don't get sunburned from it. Like, you can go out in the sun and you really, obviously, you go for extremes, there's always a breaking point, but like you're more tolerant to the sun. And one of the big things I noticed, I don't know if it's carnivore related, is mosquitoes don't really bite me as much. And I don't, it's a pretty, I don't know if they're attracted to something that when you eat a lot of carbohydrates, they're attracted to it because at one time in my life I had cattle, and like mosquitoes and flies are just so attracted to cattle. But at the same time, if you go to the zoo and you see the lions, there are really no mosquitoes or flies around them compared to like the cow. Like a cow is like, it's disgusting how much they attract. But it's pretty, I don't know the science behind this or if it's just, a new observation, but it just seems like it's a great diet, like with a lot of little hidden things, factors in it. And I will say, it's really hard. I've seen this from people I've gotten on the carnivore diet. My best friend, he was a pro athlete and, his whole life. And so when he retired, he didn't stop training as much. And a pro athlete, you get used to the amount of food you eat. And so his weight would always balloon, and he would crash diet. And eventually I told him about the carnivore diet. Absolutely loved it. And like shedded 40 pounds so fast. And I mean, just loved the diet. And just for the fact that like you can eat as much as you want, but there's only so much meat you can really eat, but like you can eat a lot of fruit. You can eat and it's the whole concept. If you eat clean, it's harder to gain weight. That's not true either. Like you can eat oatmeal and like it depends how much you eat. Carbohydrates really can get you fast. But when you just have the meat, it's really hard to pack on weight. I mean, you'd really have to work on it. I don't know too many people that could really like get fat from it. I don't know if that would be possible, to be honest. I mean, because you just after you have a certain amount of meat, you're like no more. Because I'm the guy that just keeps eating the meat till he can't eat anymore. And
No, no.
it's
A couple of weeks back, I had a nice little steak dinner for myself, celebrating something. Just had that with some avocado on the side and with some water. I was golden, you know.
yeah.
And so, Cam, I want to say thank you again for letting me into your space and letting me and just telling me about your book and your life and everything. And please tell us where we can connect with you so that those who want to explore, the Savage Chill can reach out to you.
Yeah, you can go to my website, savagechillstyle.com, and I would recommend everyone to buy the book. And if you are struggling and you can't afford the book, email me. I'll send you a copy myself. If you have questions about the book, you can email me. I'll answer them. If you want to work with me, that's fine. But I'm more than happy to help anyone that is looking for help. I know it's a tough world, and to be honest, it's a tough time to be a man um, in today's world, especially if you're past 40. I mean, things have changed drastically. Um, Being a man, so it's tough, and especially 40s, you're going through a divorce or anything. It's tough. I would say is don't give up ever. I convince everyone, that has had like two failed marriages They say, I'm finished. I'm never going to do it again. And I say, look, if you find the right one, you got to do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you got to you can't give up, I mean, because there is someone out there for you to be happy with. And don't give up. Don't have that mindset. Always leave an open mind. It's quitting. You can't quit, and you will be rewarded, but you can't jump on anything that comes along either. So you got to be patient, but you have to be willing. And that goes for everything in life.
Absolutely. And thank you, Cam. I'll make sure to put up all the links and everything to your book, to your website, your Instagram, so that anyone interested can reach out to you. And, thank you so much for giving me your time, your story, and all the insights that you gave to us. I really appreciate
Hey,
it.
thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Oscar. That was a great episode. If you've been living in pain long enough to call it normal, Cam's story is a wake-up call. We heard how he stopped panicking, stopped whining, cut out the habits that kept him stuck, and built a simple but ruthless system for healing that gave him back his body, his focus, and his life. Adelante, siempre, por tu mente, forward, always for your mind. This is the FYI. I Am Damaged podcast.
In a bright green jungle where the tall trees sway, lived a little elephant who felt big feelings. Every day Logan loved to splash and play by the riverside, but sometimes wobbly legs made him wanna run and hide. Tummy doing flips like a stormy shaking drum. A tiny voice inside him whispered, what if I can't have fun? Then Brandon, the wise monkey, smiled from the tree, said, little friend, take a breath, come and sit with me. Feel your feet on the ground, feel your hand on your heart. We're breathing together, that's how courage starts. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through this, scared and know what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Next day in the jungle they played a game of tag. Logan felt the nervous pull, his body started to drag, but he remembered Brandon and the tools he had inside. Took a deep gentle breath instead of running off to hide. Breathe in the sunshine, breathe out all the fear. Stomped his big elephant feet and felt his courage appear. With the wiggle of his trunk and a lap so free, whispered to himself, there's a lion heart in me. His friends saw him smiling as he joined in the game. They asked, Logan, what's your secret? You don't look the same. He said, when my thoughts get loud, I don't have to stay small. I breathe and move my body and I stand up tall. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind be wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through the scared and oh what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Little heart listening, this song is for you. It's okay to feel scared, that feeling's true. But just like Logan in the jungle so wide, you've got quiet, steady strength living inside. So breathe in slowly, feel your feet on the floor. Let your shoulders soften, you don't need to whisper whisper to yourself when the worries rush through. I am strong, I am safe, and I know what to do. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe in slow, lay it out with a wish when my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, like I'm all down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I assist, I can do this step by step forward through the skin and know what it is. Logan showed the jungle and I show the world. There's a strong-minded hero in every boy and girl in the bright green jungle. When the stars shine above, brave little hearts fall asleep, feeling safe and loved.